So welcome along to the final episode of my 64 days on the MiniMed 640G. In the Thespian Society, I believe they call this the rap party, so we shall give that a bit of a go later on. I've got to say, I've loved doing the vlog. It's been a good laugh. Yeah, been like to enjoy being in front of the camera and hopefully sharing a bit of my experience. I hope you've enjoyed it too. Although it has taken quite a lot of time to do, it's been worthwhile hopefully. So some of the things that I've covered within the 22 episodes is what the product is, how to set it up, what SmartGuard is and how that works, and then also, that which I thought was the most enjoyable part for me, was how you manage exercise, how you manage nights out, stag do's, and just general life really. So hopefully you found that interesting, and below on the vlog I've put links to the other episodes in case you want to go back and check some of those out. So in terms of this final episode, what have I got in store for you? Well, first of all, what I'm going to do is take a look back at, well, what are the differences between this pump and what else is out there? And the best way I can do that is to look back at 64 days when I was on the VAO from October and November and compare those results in terms of HbA1c, blood glucose readings, hypos, etc. and compare that to the last 64 days on the MiniMed 640G and to see whether, you know, has this advancement made any difference whatsoever, or is it just a nice little gimmick or not? So I'll cover that. And then secondly, what I'm going to do is talk about what are the good things about the new MiniMed 640G, what are its limitations, and what are some of the considerations you will need to make if you're thinking about choosing this as your insulin pump or insulin system. And then finally, one of the things I've enjoyed most about this is just being a bit of a prat in front of the camera. So I've saved up a little few beauties towards the end, so keep watching if yeah, you want to see me make a bit of a fool out of myself. So it's the final opportunity. Hopefully I won't get sacked, haven't done so far, so here we go. Okay, so this is the techie part for the diabetes nerds like myself. I have taken a direct comparison of my VAO results for 64 days from October to December, and I've compared those directly with the MiniMed 640G from the 64 days that I've been on it, in comparison for the VAO CGM versus the MiniMed 640G with SmartGuard. So I'm going to show you the results. I've put the downloads on my vlog, the actual PDF, so in case you think I'm lying, the information's there in black and white, and I've also put a nice tabular summary on the vlog below. But anyway, it's really visual to see what the difference has been, if any, between the two. So the VAO in green and the MiniMed 640G. So they're the time spans from, as I've just discussed, October to December, and then February to April for the MiniMed 640G. So you get the idea. So in the 64 days, number of blood glucose tests. The VAO, 550, MiniMed 640G, 495, almost 500. So about 50 less, but still 9 and 8 per day. So not a great deal of difference. What was the blood glucose average during that whole 64 days? VAO 7.1, MiniMed 640G 7.1. So again, no difference. Sensor glucose average on the VAO 8.3, MiniMed 640G 7.3. Again, no difference. Insulin dose 36 units even on the VAO, 36 units on the VAO, 35 on the MiniMed 640G, 60-40 split, basal bolus, again, no difference. HbA1c. HbA1c at that time on the VAO was 6.1%, or in the new money 43 millimoles per mole. On the MiniMed 640G, slightly improved at 5.8%, 40 millimoles per mole, but again, not a great deal of difference. Surely there's got to be some difference in the number of hypos that you have. Hypos, less than 3.5. On the VAO during the whole 64 days when I looked at, 30 hypos, which means that of less than 3.5 millimoles, which is the official hypo, is 3.3 per day. And on the MiniMed 640G, 28, 3.1 per day, so very little difference. And I think it's a really key point for people to understand who maybe have diabetes or don't have diabetes, is that for someone to run tight control and have a good HbA1c around 6%, you're expected to have probably 3 hypos per week that you can manage yourself and get out of, and that's backed up by the Daphne research. So for people out there who are not have any hypos, the likelihood is you're probably not running tight enough control realistically, because the margins are so tight with diabetes. 10 grams extra carbohydrate, you go 3 millimoles higher. Over bolus by 1 unit, you have a hypo. You're dealing with very tight margins, especially when you're chucking exercise, alcohol, activity, all the rest of it. So 3 hypos per week is normal. So what I'm trying to show here is, actually, on the VAO and the MiniMed 640G, on the VAO you can achieve excellent control without too many hypos. And just the same as the MiniMed 640G, you can achieve excellent control with, not too many hypos. So there's very little difference in terms of actual results and clinical results that you can see. There is a slight difference on one thing though, there's actually no difference on the high sensor glucose alert. So my high sensor glucose is set at 12, so I've got 1 per day on the VAO, 1 per day on the MiniMed 640G, so no difference there. So, where is the difference? Looks like one performs exactly as the other. They do in clinical results, yes, but then when you look at this is where the real difference is. The person who is using it all the time, what is the difference for me? If I look back at the VAO, when I was using the VAO, I was getting 12 low alarms per day. That meant 12 times per day, my VAO, my trusty beloved VAO, would alarm at me 12 times a day saying, John, predicting you to go low. John, you're low. John, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, get up, test your blood, have a biscuit, have some glucose tablets. So I was prepared to do that 12 times a day because I want to run tight control without too many hypos. But that meant I was spending a massive amount of time managing that. You look at the MiniMed 640G with the suspend before low, I was only getting 1 low alarm per day. You compare that to 2, that is a huge difference for the person on the end of it. And just to show that a little bit further, in terms of the VAO, even though the low glucose suspend was available, I never had any suspends during the day, and because I would get the alarms, I would sort them out myself, which meant that it was very labour intensive for me, but that was the way I wanted to manage it. The massive difference is with the MiniMed 640G with the smart guard and the suspend before low and resuming without any alarms, that was suspending my pump on average for 2 hours 8 minutes per day, on an average 2 suspends per day. And I think that's what is different to get your head around with this technology, is 2 suspends per day where it's helping you out and allowing you to run tight control means that you can actually run tight control without having too many hypos, because this will sort it out for you. Without you having to intervene, apart from when maybe you over bolus and you have to step in because you've gone too far. But that is a massive difference for the person who's actually wearing it. And when I look back and did some maths, that meant on average it took about 7 or 8 minutes to manage a low alarm. I would have to get rid of the alarm in the first place and then manage it with some extra carbs or a temporary basal, whatever. That meant that 90 minutes per day I was spent extra managing my diabetes because of the alarms, and it roughly worked out that meant I lost about 8 hours per week in sleep. So I used to have bags under my eyes. These babies now, you can see I'm getting 10 hours of my life back that I used to manage all these CGM alarms, and actually getting full night's sleep. And I'm sure there are lots of parents out there with kids who are going through this with, and this is where I guess I would say any CGM system, whether it's a Dexcom, whether it's an Abbott Navigator, is the CGM relies on you responding to the alarms and having to make all these extra decisions and undergo 90 minutes extra per day and losing these 8 hours sleep per week. You can achieve good control for that, and that's what I was doing on the VAO, and I was perfectly happy to do that, but not everybody is. The big difference with this and the smart guard is I get 10 hours of my life back a week, which means, you get full night's sleep. It's a massive difference for someone, and I would have to say that if I was to sum that part up, and this is sort of me being real, is that I guess smart guard is not the answer, but certainly it makes it gives you more time back in your week, so you can actually spend it living life instead of managing diabetes. So that's the kind of the 3-month wrap of the difference between the two and the CGM systems is you can achieve good control with any CGM system, and if you're willing to take on board all the extra alarms and make all those extra decisions, then brilliant. I was prepared to do that before and still will be prepared to do that now. But the difference of using this and actually having it suspending before I go low and resuming without me knowing about it, and I just look back. So if I take a look back at today as an example, if I take a close look there, it's quite normal that during the night at 1 o'clock in the morning there were a couple of suspends before low there, and then during the day when this big drop was on after a correction dose, I think, the suspend before low kept me out of a hypo there. Before on the VAO I'd have had to get up there and manage that, which would have meant I'd lost a couple of hours sleep, and there again during the day when I was driving I would have had to step on board, pull over and sort all that out. So they're just a couple of examples, and there's been plenty during the vlog. So CGM is fantastic. If you're willing to take on board all the extra alarms, any system will do. But in my opinion, after using this for 64 days, the big difference is it semi-automates the hypos for you. You still have to step in certain situations, but in terms of taking a step forward and closing a loop, for me, it's made a massive difference. But obviously, again, I do work for Medtronic, I'm bound to say that, but check out the information below in the downloads. You know, the data doesn't lie. So yeah, so there's that. That's the serious stuff. Let's get on to a bit more of the fun stuff. Okay, so here we're going to look at what are the improvements on the MiniMed 640G and what are the limitations. I know a few people love my clap, so I thought I'd chuck another one in for you. You know who you are. Okay, so what are the improvements? First of all, the VAO. I got sick how many times people say, why have you got a pager on your hip? Why have you got a pager on your hip? Shut up, it ain't a pager, it's an insulin pump. However, now we've got a bit of a sexy look beast right here. So instead of why have you got a pager, it's now why have you got an iPod? I prefer an iPod to a pager. At least it's the 1990s and not the 1980s now. Obviously a massive thing is the colour screen, not because it looks cool, but at 2 o'clock in the morning or when you're out in a nightclub even, actually you can see this now, which is pretty useful, and I can imagine if you're a parent that's a massive thing, and actually the numbers are quite big and clear, so that's a massive improvement also. Personally, I don't use the remote bolus that often, but I do have it for things such as pint of beer and apples, so I can bolus pretty easily from the remote without having to get my pump out, so that's pretty useful. You can have now up to 8 different basal profiles, and as I showed when I went to Prague, you can set those before you go, so you can have diminishing levels of insulin as the levels of alcohol go up, so that's useful as well. And I'm not going to bang on about SmartGuard, but obviously that's the key thing in terms of moving towards closing the loop. We've already discussed that in detail, so that's big. And there is one other thing as well that's new about it, which is pretty good, but I'm going to save that little bit towards the end because I know Dave Sowerby is looking to see me half naked again, so this one will be for you, Dave. Okay, so there's the improvements, which are all there. I've written down nicely. Okay, so what are the limitations? One of the things that I have found, I have now used within my 64 days, I've used 15 sensors. Now I should have only used about 11 or 12, but I've had 3 change sensor alarms, and that is where the new algorithm within the Guardian link, the bit that attaches to your bum, which is there, that has an algorithm that if it picks up that the sensor health is poor, it sends a message to the pump and says, the sensor's dying, therefore you need to change it. That's happened to me 3 times during this period where the sensors died after about 3 days, and quite inappropriately, one of them was when I was doing the 24-hour bike ride, which is a real pain in the ass, literally, because I had to put another sensor in, and the other 2 were at times where I was away from my sensor, so I was out without sensors for a while. So Medtronic did give me new sensors for those, which is fine, but obviously that's something to pay attention to see whether that's something that happens for you, something that didn't used to happen on the VAO, so that is a limitation from what I've seen. It could be seen as a positive thing if it stops your sensors performing poorly, but it is a bit of a pain in the ass at the time. Another limitation is that there's no bolus wizard within this. So you can bolus and do just a bolus of whatever units, which I actually think can be quite useful because people who are on a pump can get very lazy and they'll just go, yeah, my pump's got all the settings in, my nurse put it in there. You need to know what your settings are. So I know mine's 1 unit for 16 grams of carbs. So if I have 32 grams of carbs, I can just bolus 2 units from here. And if my blood sugar's high at 15, I can add a correction in. It doesn't take on board the active insulin, so that is a limitation, but if you're good with your diabetes knowledge, you could use this as a remote bolus pretty well, but it still does need the bolus with the technology. I mean, come on Medtronic, how hard can it be? Another thing is still a limitation. You still have this bad boy right here. You still have the tube leading all the way in to your bum. So, in an ideal world, obviously we'd like a tubeless pump, but to be honest, after seeing some of the most recent research that's come out that's compared patch pumps compared to tethered pumps and the delivery accuracy between the two, when you get a 95% accuracy with tethered pumps or tube pumps versus only a 60% accuracy with the patch pumps, you will not find me anywhere near a patch pump until they can improve their accuracy. So that's for me. I'm quite happy with the tube pump. I prefer to have the accurate delivery. One thing I would say is it sounds like this is amazing, you know, this SmartGuard technology with the sensors, yeah, it's brilliant. You have to have the right expectations. So for me, when I look back at all my results, the average difference or the inaccuracy of the sensors is about 10%. So what does that mean? It means if my finger prick is 10, it means that the blood glucose, the sensor glucose will be anywhere within 10% of there. So anywhere between 9 and 11. So it is quite accurate, but if you're expecting every single finger prick that you do to match the sensor glucose, you'll be massively disappointed. And it also means that 90% of the time, the suspend before low on the SmartGuard will work accurately, but there will be 10% of the times where it suspends and there's no need for it to suspend. So you're going to have a few false suspends occasionally as well. So you have to be prepared for that. But for me, it working 90% of the time really accurately, as I've shown, it's a massive difference to my life. One thing to know, if you're having times of massive rapid change in your glucose, and my exercise vlog was a good one for that, I had a BG of 18 before I did the exercise, and then I had a lot of active insulin on board. I exercised hard for half an hour, and it dropped from 18 to 4 in half an hour, so it dropped 14 millimoles in half an hour. Now we know that the sensor is anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes behind what's actually happening in the blood, so when I did my finger prick it was 4.3, but the sensor was still reading 8.9 because there's no way it can catch up. So have realistic expectations. If you've just had a massive meal and your glucose is rising massively, of course there's going to be a big difference. If you've given a whopping dose of insulin and you're charging down from 20, then there's going to be a difference because you've given a big glucose shift at there. So if you have realistic expectations, you will get the benefit from it. If your expectations are too high, you will probably be disappointed with any CGM system. Okay, there's one thing talking about all this knowledge, which is good in terms of the technology, but one thing I would say, and has come through loud and clear from other vloggers such as Ninjabetic and Dave Sowerby and plenty of other vlogs that I've seen, is technology is good, but there's no substitute for your knowledge inside your head with diabetes. So you need to get yourself a good understanding of what diabetes is. Carb counting is probably the most undervalued skill with type 1 diabetes management. People who carb count accurately and carb count well have good control and have fewer hypos. So if you don't carb count at the minute, really consider looking into that. And you need to know how activity is going to affect your results. Does it make your blood glucose drop, or is it really intense stuff that makes it go high? How does alcohol affect it? It generally tends to drop your bloods, but if you have drinks with carbs in, it sends you high. So you need to understand why that is, and obviously the effects of illness as well. My strong advice would be to anybody who's thinking about improving their diabetes would be to go on a structured education programme, such as for adults, Daphne, and I know a lot of the paediatric teams are now doing education programmes, but the more knowledge you have in your head, the easier it is to apply to your diabetes, regardless of whether you're using multiple day injections, pumps, or CGM. If you haven't got the basics and the groundwork, you're going to find anything really difficult to manage. One final little bit is one thing that's been the biggest surprise to me in terms of doing this vlog was I had a very sceptical view about the hashtag diabetes online community, the doc. So as a healthcare professional and someone who had never really been online before, my opinion was kind of, oh, there are all these really busybody people who are kind of out there just saying whatever and giving really unsafe information. But I've been so pleasantly surprised to meet a lot of people online. I haven't met them in person, don't know what some of them look like, but they're really friendly. They've actually got a really great knowledge of diabetes, and they're very helpful in terms of giving practical advice, and they don't tend to overextend themselves and tell you what to do, but they discuss their own experience so you can learn from that. And that has been really nice to get to know a lot of people online, and that's been one of probably the best things about this as well. So yeah, amazing knowledge, but a little bit like myself, there are a lot of also lovable self-promoting idiots on there as well, so I would classify myself in there. But hopefully these people can help by being a little bit of out there personalities and helping you out with your diabetes and making it seem manageable. Then hopefully that'll help. So for me, the diabetes online community gets a massive thumbs up, and it's something that I will be getting involved in. Okay, so that's enough of the sort of vlog and the boring stuff. I'm going to finish with some final few snippets that will hopefully be a little bit funny, and yeah, we'll see what we can do. So one feature that we haven't discovered or haven't talked about too much is the waterproof feature. Obviously with the old Veo, you couldn't get in the shower and have a shower with it, because that's what you do. So that's it, if you listen to the waterproof one, people. Obviously have a shower in it and get in there, but now this bad boy's waterproof. Focus don't work. So there we go. Waterproof. Perfect. Out of the shower, and this is the final bit. I just want to say thank you to everybody who has watched. Over the 23 episodes, there's been over 5,000 page views, so obviously that's a massive appreciation, and thank you very much for watching. I hope you found it useful. Possibly after cricket's finished in September, if I'm still a single man and I've got time to do it, I might do a few more vlogs, because there's things I'd like to do, like carb counting and some other aspects of diabetes management, but we shall see. And the final sort of shout out, really, because one of the people who has made me smile the most with doing all this has been Dave Sowerby's daughter Martha. So inspired by you, we finish with and cut.